James Franklin fired. Penn State did the right thing. Let's talk about Curt Cignetti.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest, craziest sport on planet Earth. James Franklin, done. I wanted to see that happen for Penn State's sake. It had gotten to that level. I will get to who the candidates could be. You're going to see Curt Cignetti's name. I have so many thoughts on that particular front. James Franklin wasn't the only coach that was fired on Saturday. What in the world is going to happen next in Corvallis? Let's start with James Franklin, though. This had to happen. This had to happen because everything Penn State needed to go win a national championship was there. He's not being fired because he failed to win the big one. He's been fired because he failed to even perform at the same level he has been at for a really long time. The jury's been out for a long time on James Franklin. The narrative, very clear. He wins the games he should. He loses the games that he also kind of should, sort of. Depends on the spot. But when he's an underdog, he tends to lose. When he's a favorite, tends to win. When your best attribute, which is not to be taken for granted. Look how many crazy upsets happen in college football. Florida beat Texas. Anybody want to explain that to me? I mean, I guess Texas is good after this week, but before they weren't. They're up. Yeah. Beating teams that you're supposed to in a world where Alabama lost to Vanderbilt last year, where the national runners-up Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Doing what you're supposed to do is not a throwaway stat about a coach. It's not a narrative to disregard. It is representative that you have elevated the floor of the program you are running to a certain level, and that's to be commended. And James Franklin had that in his back pocket. Now he's lost that, and he lost the locker room. That's what it looked like. There is no other way to explain losing to UCLA and Northwestern. Do you realize the transitive losses that Penn State has in those two games? UCLA lost to New Mexico. Northwestern got housed by Tulane. Rosters capable of losing to those teams didn't just hang around in consecutive weeks with James Franklin's team. We'd be having a different conversation. He'd still be the head coach if they won those games close. To lose those games, to me, is representative that after that Oregon game, he lost the locker room. I don't care what messages come out of there, what anybody says, I do not care. My eyes are not lying to me. That team is way too talented to play that poorly in consecutive games against opponents that you should be beating by a lot. A point spread is not everything. It is representative of an analytical examination, or at least one particular data point of what these two teams are or what their potential is. And James Franklin got Penn State to the point where he wasn't coming close to realizing the full potential of that roster. And as I said previously, everything on paper Penn State needs to win a national championship is there. The reason I'm not having the same conversation, I thought about this earlier today. I could make this same argument about Clemson, who's starting to play better football, but it's too late. The season's already lost. And they had disastrous outcomes earlier this year. I could make the same case. The problem is that Dabo Swinney won a conference championship last year and has 2 national championships in his back pocket. That's the leg he has to stand on as he woefully underperforms this season. James Franklin doesn't have that. James Franklin has got 1 win over Ohio State, 0 for 2 against Oregon. You just go down the list, and the big game narrative was fair, and he was aware of it because he used to get asked about it a lot. But when the thing you have to show that you are good at a certain level doesn't just go away, but goes away spectacularly, yeah, a change needed to be made. Because I saw a team that was not playing hard enough for their head coach, that was not well prepared. I saw a team that had two fantastic coordinators. Why in the world? I watched those guys have success at their previous spots. Why isn't it working out here? You go back to the head coach. You have to. You have to. This is absolutely the right move. Is it going to cost a lot of money? Yep. It's going to cost a lot of money. If you put a better head coach, if you put Curt Cignetti, for instance, into that Penn State locker room as the head coach, they are an undefeated football team, ranked number 2 in the country to Ohio State, setting up the game of the year, of the decade for your program when they travel to Columbus later. That's the difference. That's the difference. I'm glad that Penn State had the guts to go and do this. I don't think it's a decision that was made lightly. $50 million. I know we talk about money in college football and how much there is, and it's bad, and it's all this sort of stuff. I get that. I really, really do. $50 million, I don't care who you are. Your next hire has to work. It's got to work. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And James Franklin, the crazy thing, he might still have his job if he hadn't lost at home to Preston Stone and the Northwestern Wildcats. The highest of vibes for the Northwestern Wildcats in my fan mood assessment. It doesn't get better than that. You win, send James Franklin out of the Big Ten. Maybe you should hire David Braun in Happy Valley. I think that guy's actually a pretty darn good football coach. His team doesn't completely stink. They've got more Big Ten wins than Penn State, who's 0-3. So there's that. Anyway, they've got 2. They beat UCLA. Anyway, just throwing that out there. Giving Northwestern the credit they deserve. But Penn State's just complete and utter disaster over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, UCLA looks like a new football team. That shouldn't matter. That shouldn't matter. Another reason that this firing makes sense to me, even though some like, what are you going to do? What about recruit? I don't care. I do not care. You have to get back to a restart point. Because this is year, 11, 12? It is over a decade. If you are getting these sort of results at a proud program like Penn State or another big-time one, let's say Michigan or Ohio State or Oregon or any number of SEC programs, unless you're Florida where your expectations are just shockingly low, apparently. Why does Billy Napier still have a job? I don't know. Anyway, when you get to this point and it's been this much time, you can't say, we believe he could still figure it out. No, this was the year. You heard me say that. You probably heard plenty of other people say that as well. We weren't making it up. I stand by everything I said about Penn State coming into the year. They should be not just in the playoff, not just the Big Ten championship game. They should be make the national championship game or bust. And when you are further away from that than it feels like the United States is to England, geographically, you got to make a change when this is year 12. Yep, you might lose some recruits. Guess what? You can't be thinking that way right now. You have to think about who the right leader is going to be to get your program to the next level. Because James Franklin demonstrated he had plenty of time. He had plenty of support. He built a really good roster. He wasn't the guy to do it. Okay, now you have to go find the guy who is. Let's talk about Curt Cignetti. First, this episode brought to you by Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is Northwestern shocking Penn State in Happy Valley. Something I didn't mention in the first segment that I should have, you lost the fan base. You lost the fan base. You know why? Because you can only take so much sometimes as a sports fan. Everybody reaches their breaking point. Video games are really fun. Everybody rage quits. Penn State fans were starting to rage quit. And guess what? Preston Stone and the Northwestern Wildcats. They could go to a bowl game this year. That'd be great. Good for Northwestern. That'd be great for Northwestern. For the Wildcats to go in there with Penn State at home and for them to be completely unintimidated and unfazed, the defense for Northwestern gets all the credit in the world to me. The way they played in that football game, I saw them earlier this year when they played Oregon. I tell you, they looked pretty fast. They looked pretty physical, pretty well coached. Not elite, but not bad. They look pretty darn good. They moved Northwestern forward, and that has caused quite the ripple effect in college football. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, let's have the conversation. I am not sitting here and telling you that Curt Cignetti is a candidate. I'm not telling you he isn't, or that it's been reported. The name popped into my head, especially considering what he just did over the weekend. Do you understand how revolutionary of a figure Curt Cignetti is in college football? Do you even remember? What's the last thing you remember about Indiana football before Curt Cignetti arrived? The dude has lost two football games. He's lost 2 football games in the last couple of years with the Hoosiers. He's going to lead them to their second straight 10-plus win season. They never had one before. Your last memory of Indiana football before he got there was probably Michael Penix and where he had the Hoosiers during the COVID season. That's probably it. Cignetti has now made them into a top 5 team, a nationally relevant program that looks like a contender for the national championship that just went on the road and beat Oregon. In year 2, he became the second coach to beat Dan Lanning at Autzen Stadium. The other guy is the guy I just mentioned, Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer. It was that first iteration of the Washington team. That's the other team that has beaten Dan Lanning at Autzen Stadium. The national champions lost at Autzen last year. And Curt Cignetti has Indiana in year 2 beating Oregon. That's one of the more remarkable things we have ever seen. It is truly incredible. It's more incredible than Vanderbilt beating Alabama last year. You know why? Vanderbilt was at home. That was one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. Don't get me wrong. But Indiana has not had any identity, reputation, brand power, respect, credibility, none of that. And all of a sudden he's there. This should be the top ideal, perfect world candidate for Penn State. If I were a Nittany Lions fan, that's the guy I would want more than anybody else. If he is doing that at Indiana, what in the world can he do at Penn State with those resources? What is he? How would that not work? That's what I'd be curious to. What would it look like? What would have to happen for that to not work? The transfer portal still exists. It's a one-time window in January, but it's still there. We don't have serious limits on how many times kids can transfer, so he could take a lot of his players from Indiana. Look, if you were Curt Cignetti, are you happy where you're at? Probably. He's kind of grizzly. I don't know what the right word is there. You know what I'm talking. He's kind of that tough. He's kind of grumpy, grouchy. But he's got to like where he's at right now. He's got one of the 3 best teams in college football. My top 25 is going to come out on Monday. Indiana's going to be inside the top 3, folks. Top 3. Right now, in this moment. You would rather be at Indiana than Penn State. Over the next 10 years, I don't know that that's true. Which program has demonstrated a higher recruiting potential? The answer is Penn State. Doesn't mean Indiana can't be good, but about the only thing left to wonder about Curt Cignetti is how high is he going to be able to take Indiana's high school recruiting. We've seen what he does in the transfer portal, and that's been nothing short of remarkable and darn near flawless, it seems. But in the long run, probably don't want to bank on the portal like that every single year. That's the biggest difference to me between going to Penn State and being at Indiana. So if I were Curt Cignetti and Penn State called me and said, do you want to be the next head coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions? I would say yes. That doesn't mean that Indiana is a bad place to be. It certainly is not. But in the world of the transfer portal, you don't have to wait. He didn't have to wait to succeed at Indiana. Like, where can't this? Google him, guys, as he once told us to do. Fair enough. All he does is win. That's all he's ever done. And that was the reputation for Kalen DeBoer as well. And lo and behold, he is winning games at Alabama. Talked about that on the last episode of this show. You can go check that out if you want my thoughts on the Crimson Tide. He at least did it at places that had a history of success at the Power 4 level. I don't know about Sioux Falls. He turned them into a big-time winner. Fresno State, they've had some great years. Washington went to the playoff with a different coach. Alabama, don't need to say anything else. Curt Cignetti's won at James Madison that made an FCS to FBS transition within the last 5 to 7 years. And then went to Indiana that had never had a 10-plus win season. He's going to do that twice in the first 2. Dude just wins. Dude knows how to coach, knows how to run a program. You don't have to worry about, does he have enough experience? Nope, he's got that. He checks every box. He checks every box for Penn State. And for Curt Cignetti, if you were looking for a job, yeah, your recruiting base is stronger, I think, over with the Nittany Lions from a brand standpoint and the proximity to talent. So yeah, I would take the Penn State job. That doesn't mean that Curt Cignetti will. Because with what he has built in just 2 years at Indiana, if he wants to stay there, no reason he can't be a perennial top 10 team. No reason. No reason. This is not me taking a shot at Indiana and saying they can't be a great program. They're not as good. No, this is just me saying at this point in time, Penn State is a better job than Indiana. It is. Curt Cignetti has completely revitalized the image of that particular job, but Penn State is still a better overall college football job. Now, here's the biggest obstacle. And Hoosier fans, you probably want to listen to this part. Curt Cignetti's buyout, not going to be cheap. Penn State is going to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million. With the remember, Indiana extended Cignetti because they wanted to lock him down. They knew what they had. They were smart to do so. The Nittany Lions would be committing. I don't know that there's an exact number out there, but because there's been fluctuations on this and that, bottom line, it's going to be over $100 million if they want to make that happen. Now, the importance of this hire, as I mentioned earlier, can't be overstated. Because Penn State could try to save some of their current recruits. But when you are going from a coach that had a high level of success, and James Franklin had a high level of success at Penn State, when you are going from that to your next coach, you better not make the Billy Napier hire. You better make the Mike Elko hire. Texas A&M put up a bunch of money to make Jimbo Fisher go away, to bring in Mike Elko. It's working very well. It had to. When you pay that much money to make a coach go away who had a certain floor, I know the floor was lowering down. We saw that. Still, if James Franklin had finished out this season going into next year, they still probably would have been an 8 to 10 win team. I'm sure they would have found a way to bounce back. I'm not sure. I'm only sure because their schedule is really favorable next year, which is another piece to this equation. Penn State does not play Oregon, Ohio State, or Michigan next year. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. I have to double check this. Their schedule next year: Marshall, at Temple, Buffalo. Their Big Ten schedule in no order has Maryland. They do play Michigan, Northwestern, Minnesota, Purdue, Rutgers, USC, Wisconsin, Washington. No Oregon, no Ohio State, no Indiana. That's Penn State's schedule next year. So the coach that gets hired can go in there and succeed immediately if he's the right guy for the job. So when you pay this much money, Penn State, pressure's on. Pressure. Again, I support it because I'm a guy that wants schools, institutions, teams, whoever, go all in. Go for it. Or else what the heck are you doing here? Penn State's going for it. You can't screw this one up because whoever you hire, you're going to be stuck with him for quite a few years. Dan Mullen wasn't bad. He just wasn't good enough. Billy Napier is worse. Jimbo Fisher wasn't good enough. Mike Elko's a lot better. They need to find their Mike Elko. Who is that? We'll see. We will see. But if I were Curt Cignetti, yeah, I'd take the job. Not automatically. I wouldn't be in a hurry to leave Indiana. I would, however, say, yeah, that's a better job. But if I'm Penn State and I can't go get Curt Cignetti, well, who are we going for next? Manny Diaz doing a decent job at Duke. Feels too small. It feels too... That's the interesting thing. Penn State's a big brand. Penn State's a big school. Spending a bunch of money to make a coach go away. Hey, Bill Belichick might be available soon. You never know. Can't believe that's a disaster, except I totally can't. So, who do you think Penn State should hire? If not Cignetti, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Also, Indiana fans, I just want to be clear. I'm not trying to start a feud here or nothing. I do not believe Curt Cignetti will be the next Penn State head coach. If I were Penn State, that's who I would target. And if I were Curt Cignetti, I would take the job. But guess what? I'm not. I'm not either of those things. I am me. I am Spencer McLaughlin. And I have as many head coaching names currently to my title as Trent Bray. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, you pick a bet, you put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. My best bets of the week were $500. Maybe I should stop including the bonus bet. I probably will, unless I really like Oregon on a particular line. If I hadn't had that in there, or if the Auburn game had been officiated correctly, would have had a winning week. But hey, not a losing week, and that's something. That's something. If you faded my picks this week, you did not make money. But if you'd done that the rest of the year, you'd be in pretty darn good shape. So everything you want for college football and the NFL is over there. Prop bets, point spreads, money line, it's all there. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Check them out at FanDuel.com. This episode also brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That is why Monarch Money exists. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives like you and me and many people you know. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. I don't know if that was phrased perfectly, but bottom line is I'm not a head coach of a football program. Trent Bray is not a head coach of a football program. Might never be again. And you know what? Some guys are coordinators, and that's okay. Trent Bray's let go from Corvallis after an 0-7 start. This was necessary, and I'm sure painful for some because he's an Oregon State guy. He was instrumental to the rebuild of the program towards the end of the Pac-12, RIP. He played for Oregon State. He wanted to make it work. He got off to a 4-1 start. Since then, one win. One victory after a 4-1 start. Oregon State was 0-7. There is no question in my mind this decision had to be made. And I've seen the defenses of Trent Bray sound something like this. He's in a tough situation. Who are you going to go get? What are you going to do? It's too hard of a spot to be in. Their NIL's a mess. All those things can be true. It shouldn't look this bad. Trent Bray didn't need to be over 500 right now for me to believe he was the guy to lead them into the Pac-12 conference next year. He did not need to do that with their schedule. There were two games he was never going to win, Texas Tech and Oregon. That was never going to happen. So you had two losses baked into the cake. Tell me why in year two, why should he be that far behind Wake Forest in year one? Is that a premier program in the ACC with a backup quarterback? I don't think so. I don't think Wake Forest is terrible. I'm just saying they came onto your field and scored 22 points to begin the game. This was a complete an utter disaster. And it wasn't the worst one that they had this year. You can't get the special teams right, and then the coach gets to stick around for a couple weeks. Why? Why exactly? You went out and committed, and by the way, full props for doing that, because you should go out and take what money you do have and try to get big-time players like Malik Murphy. They did. And that's a good thing. But that it was this bad, that they still don't have a win, you can't stick around with that. Where was the path forward? What was the upside? The upside of keeping Trent Bray was projecting to the college football world that, we're going to go the cheap route. We're okay being not where we should be. If Oregon State had gone 5-7 this year, disappointing, not a disaster. 0-7? You can't stick around with that. There's nothing to feel good about. Game 1, Oregon State was favored against Cal. Favored. That's what Vegas thought of the Beavers roster. Heck, I pick Oregon State to win that game because they were at home. You had a true freshman quarterback who admittedly is very good coming to a hostile environment in game 1. Took your lunch money. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that guy's better than we thought. All right. Fair. Cal's got more resources than you. Not a lot, but more. They've got more, being in the ACC for a reduced share. Anyway, Fresno State comes to town, beats you. Looks ugly. Coach swears going into the half. There are just a lot of things that made me realize pretty quickly this year that, if this is what it looks like in year 2, if this were year 1, I wouldn't have called for Trent Bray's job a single solitary time. Because, there were a lot of challenges. And no, Oregon State doesn't have an incredible NIL situation. And I'm not diving into that whole mess and all that, but it doesn't need to look that bad. It doesn't. Fresno State's in their first year with their head coach, Matt Entz. That's a name I would call, by the way. See if he would come up to Corvallis from Fresno. Because, boy, Matt Entz is a guy that won at North Dakota State. Went and stopped at USC for a year. He's winning at Fresno State right here, right now. They didn't play well over the weekend, but they're outperforming a lot of people's expectations. And you might not have the most incredible list of candidates. But it's not just that they're 0-7, though it's part of it. It's not just that he's only won one game after a 4-1 start. That's part of it. It's how it's all looked. It looks discombobulated, disorganized. You got inconsistent play. You have a quarterback who's really talented and an offensive system that feels like they're just relying on him to make a bunch of plays. And while he's good, Malik Murphy, he can be good. We saw that briefly at Texas. We saw that at Duke last year. It cannot be as difficult to get him to play consistently as it has been. There are just too many things. What do you have to feel good about right now? What's trending up? What's optimistic for next year? Malik Murphy is regressing. The offense is not there. The defense has given up too many points to a backup quarterback from Wake Forest with a first-year staff on your home field. You can't do any of that sort of stuff. So I understand the defense of Trent Bray. I just think, man, even if you weren't the 7-8 win team that people more optimistic about the program like me this year were saying before the season, even if you don't do that, it can't look like this. It can't feel like this. You got a fan base that's already frustrated and dejected. Why? Because the college football world, to them, and justifiably so, is stupid and has left them behind, and the whole thing is a complete mess. You're already struggling. You're fighting that battle. It can't look like this. You can't put on that many bad performances at home and expect to still be the head coach. Now, the question then becomes, who do you go hire? Take your time. Take your time. You're going into the New World Pac-12. If Scott Barnes, the AD, continues to be the athletic director, plenty of people don't want him there, which I fully understand. But if he continues to be an athletic director, he's about to make the most important hire that will probably define whether he's the athletic director 5 years from now. Because if you get this head coach hire wrong going into the new conference and you're behind Fresno State and San Diego State, which they are as a football team, by the way, You are not as good as Fresno State. You are not as good as San Diego State right now. Obviously, Boise State is in front of you. You have so many things that are working against you right now. Where do you go? Do you go young and try to inject some life into the program and energy? I don't think that'd be a bad idea. I don't. I know you're going to say the name. Someone is going to say the name Jerry Neuheisel. Please calm down. Please calm down. Please relax. Return to the realm of reality. Jerry Neuheisel's awesome. He's such an easy guy to root for. Maybe one day he'll be a head coach. He's been a coordinator for 2 games. You're not hiring him to be your head coach. UCLA is probably going to hire him to be their offensive coordinator. They should. But no, that is not a name that I am remotely entertaining as a serious candidate for the Oregon State job. Now, for fans of other Power 4 programs out there, or I should say Power 4 programs, because unfortunately Oregon State not in Power 4 league anymore, even though they should be, watch out for your coordinators. Oregon State's going to try. I think there are going to be two options here. As I think out loud with this, I'd almost go for a high floor, low ceiling head coach. A guy who you know is going to come in and win, but in 4 or 5 years, you might decide, all right, this isn't the right time. You need a stabilizer. You need a guy who can win 7 games next year somehow. And then maybe he regresses and only wins 4 or 5. And then he wins 7. And then he wins 8. And then he regresses to 5 or 6. And you say, all right, we need a new coach. That's what Oregon State needs. You can't keep putting up these abysmal records and trying to it was hard enough to claw your way up when you were in the Pac-12. But now in the New World Pac, in the old Pac-12, I should say, that was hard enough and took some time. But in the New World Pac-12, the brand of Oregon State, their top quarterback commit and one other recruit flipped to other schools. Deegan Rose flipped to Fresno State. Nothing's going right now. You need someone that can build. You need someone that has proven, hey, I went to this stop, I went to that stop. You need to find your Kalen DeBoer, your Curt Cignetti, not to that extent, of course. That's, I don't think there's a candidate out there for Oregon State to come in and make them, a college football playoff caliber program, which is in the long run is what they aspire to be, and they should, because I think they can get there one day in the New World Pac-12. There's 100% on the table. You got to hire the right guy. But you need someone who can come in. Like if Chris Peterson were to come out of retirement, gosh, that would be fantastic. Or if you could get Matt Entz from Fresno State, I think that would be a really, really good move. Somebody like that gives you a certain floor. You got to get fans to buy back in. You got to get the brand back. You got to sort out the NIL so you can build a roster. There's a lot of work to be done here. Whoever takes this job has to be willing to go nose to the grindstone and just get to work. Get to work because there's a lot to be done. This is a complete and utter teardown. I doubt that there will be a lot of players from this team on the roster next year. That might be a good thing. So let me know. Let me know, Beaver fans. Who would you like to be Oregon State's next head coach? Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.